Greetings, wanderers, and welcome to Echoes from the Loam. With this episode, there is no need to light your lanterns, for I bring St. Hollow's light with us. Light lays bare what shadows hide, so stay close, and remember, he who bore the lantern did not guide the lost. Parcel arrived without postage, and no return address to speak of. Just a wax seal pressed into brittle parchment, an emblem half erased by time, a flame enclosed in a circle of thorns. Inside, nestled within folds of soot-stained cloths, lay the lantern. It was older than it should have been, made of iron warped by heat and glass fogged with age. The handle bore the faint imprint of a hand, as if someone had gripped it too tightly for too long. The wick was intact, but blackened, coated in something that wasn't quite ash. Edwin Smith, the historian, didn't light it. Not yet. He placed it on the desk beside his notes, where it sat like a relic at rest. But even unlit, it seemed to cast a presence. Shadows drawn towards it, as if summoned, and the air around it cooled. That night, the historian tossed and turned, dreaming of a chapel with no windows or doors, where candles burned without flame. A voice recited scripture backwards, syllables unravelled like thread, and at the centre of it all, the lantern, lit but somehow not burning. Edwin woke with a taste of iron in his mouth. The lantern remained where he'd left it, but the cloth it had been wrapped in was damp now, moist. He checked the seal again, and the emblem was clearer now. The thorns had bloomed, and beneath the lantern, etched into the wood of the desk, was a phrase he hadn't written. Light reveals what shadows protect. Edwin began his quest for information with the archives, but St. Hollow was not listed among the canonised. Not excommunicated, it seemed, just absent. There was no birth record, no death record, no miracles listed for the saint. Only a footnote in a 17th century ledger. Relics sealed, doctrine withdrawn. Light reveals what shadows protect. Edwin spent hours and hours tracing the phrase to a monastery in Northumberland, long since collapsed into ivy and stone. He found the monastery's remaining texts in the archives, but they were brittle, water damaged and censored, pages torn, names scratched out. But some of one passage remained, half legible beneath layers of soot. He who bore the lantern did not guide the lost, he exposed them. Edwin paused. The phrasing was all wrong. Saints were meant to heal, to illuminate, to guide, but Hollow's light was punitive, revealing, not redemptive. He kept searching amongst the old texts and tomes and found a sketch tucked between pages. A crude drawing of the lantern, surrounded by kneeling figures, their eyes gouged out, their mouths sewn shut. As night drew in, Edwin lit a candle and read aloud the surviving lines. As he spoke, the flames seemed to bend sideways as if being pulled towards him. The room chilled and his breath formed in whispers before him. From the corner of his vision, the lantern seemed to shimmer, not with light, but with attention, waiting to be seen. Edwin closed the book and the candle extinguished itself. In the silence that followed, Edwin heard a voice, but not one that was spoken and not imagined, just present around him. Confession is not a choice, it's a consequence. Another day spent researching seemed to breathe by, and as the third night descended, Edwin lit the lantern. Not out of curiosity, and not out of courage, but because the shadows had begun to whisper. The flame was pale, almost entirely colourless, and it didn't do anything to brighten the room. If anything, it dulled it further. Corners of the room receded and reflection vanished completely. Edwin watched as the light settled, not outwards, but inwards. At first, nothing happened. He sat alone and silently with the lantern. Then the walls began to change. Faint markings appeared, letters scratched into the plaster. A message written in his own hand, though he hadn't been the one to write it. I buried her in silence. I told no one. Edwin staggered back and the message faded from sight, but the lantern remained lit. He turned towards the mirror over the fireplace, and his reflection gazed back. But the reflection was wrong. Not distorted as you'd might expect, but accurate. Too eerily accurate. His face for sure, but as it had looked the night they lied. The same expression, the same guilt. The lantern flickered. A sound emerged, not from the room, but from within Edwin. A heartbeat. Not his, but slow, steady. Edwin tried to extinguish the flame, but it resisted. The wick burned without fuel and the glass grew warmer. Then the air shifted. The scent of soil, damp linen, and just a whisper of rosemary surrounded him. He turned slowly, and the chair behind him was no longer empty. A figure sat there, unmoving, unwavering, not alive nor dead, just present. Its face was obscured, but its posture was familiar. Too familiar. Edwin did not speak. It wasn't needed, and the lantern did not demand it. Not yet, anyway. The message reappeared on the wall, clearer this time. Light reveals what shadows protect. The lantern stayed lit, even after Edwin doused the wick with water, even after he sealed it in the box lined with lead. The light persisted. Not visibly, but perceptibly. It was in the corners of his vision, in the silence between his thoughts, and in the way his shadow no longer matched his movements. Every night since the lantern revealed something new. A whisper beneath the floorboards, a photograph Edwin didn't remember taking, marked with a date that hadn't happened yet. Voicemail on his phone, blank except for a breath. Edwin had tried to leave the house seeking sanctuary while walking, but the lantern followed. Not physically, of course, but in reflections, in echoes, in the way strangers looked at him too long as if they knew the truth. Edwin returned to the archives, desperate for a remedy, a respite even. But St. Hollow's texts offered no salvation, only repetition. Confession is not a choice, it is a consequence. Edwin began to speak aloud, addressing it directly, hoping to appease it. Small truths, petty lies and such. But the lantern did not flicker. It did not respond. It wanted more. It needed more. One night, Edwin found a letter on his desk, typed but unsigned. It read, "You must speak the sin aloud in the presence of the light, or the light will turn inward." Cautiously, and because he needed this madness to end, he lit the lantern again. This time, though, the flame burned red. The room darkened around it as the light consumed rather than illuminated. The air grew thick and the walls pulsed with anticipation. Then the figure returned. Same chair, same posture, but this time its face was visible. It was Edwin's. Not as they were now, but as they would be if they denied the lantern. Hollow-eyed, mouth sewn shut, skin etched with words he hadn't yet spoken. The lantern pulsed again, and Edwin understood. It wasn't showing him the past. It was showing him the future. Edwin prepared mentally for the moment the lantern demanded, with trembling hands. The ritual of it was vague. No altar, no prayers. Just 3 requirements. Speak the sin aloud. Face the light. Don't look away. Edwin placed the lantern on the floor of his study. Surrounded it with salt. Not for protection, just symbolism, he thought. A boundary. A line he hoped would hold. The flame lit itself. It was no longer red, it was clear. Not colourless, but clarifying. The room didn't darken this time either, it sharpened. Every object cast a perfect shadow. Every sound echoed for exactly the right amount of time. Edwin knelt. He tried to speak, but the words caught, and not in his throat, but in his memory. This sin was old, not dramatic, just quiet. A choice made in silence, a truth withheld. Edwin tried again. "I left her there." The lantern pulsed. "I knew she wouldn't come back." The flame grew taller, acknowledging Edwin's truth. It told them she ran. I told them she was unstable. I told them that it wasn't my fault. The lantern flared and the room vanished. Only the light remained. And in that light, Edwin saw everything he had buried. Not just the act, but the aftermath. The silence, the years of denial. The way he rewrote the story. The way he wore grief like armour. The lantern did not judge him, it recorded him. His crime. Edwin's skin began to itch, not burn. Just shift, perhaps. Letters forming beneath the surface. Not visibly or painfully, just there. He looked down and his hands bore the phrase, "Confession is not a choice." Edwin tried to stand. The salt line was gone, the room was gone, and only the lantern remained. The light did not fade. Edwin did not finish the confession, and the lantern waited, the flame holding steady with bated breath. But he said nothing more. Instead, he turned away, and the light followed. It didn't flicker. It didn't rage. It simply grew brighter. Not in the room, but in Edwin. His skin began to glow, not with heat, but with exposure. His veins lit up like ink. Bones cast shadows beneath flesh. His heartbeat became audible, rhythmic, accusatory. The light was no longer external. It was inhabiting. Edwin staggered to the mirror to find his reflection gone, and in its place a figure made of light and words. His own silhouette, etched with every unspoken truth, every omission, every moment he chose silence over honesty. The lantern pulsed. Edwin's mouth opened involuntary, but no sound came out. Just light. It spilled from his eyes, his fingertips, and the cracks in his memory. The room filled with it. Not warm light nor cold regret. Just knowing. And then the figure in the chair stood. It was him, but hollow. Mouth sewn shut, eyes wide with permanent recognition. It walked forward. Edwin tried to move but couldn't, frozen in time like his lie. The lantern flared once, final, blinding, and then pure, deep, consuming darkness. The kind that follows a scream. And there the tale ends for now, but the echoes will always remain. If you've enjoyed your stay here in my domain, leave your mark, a review, a whisper, a 5-star sigil. Until next time, wanderers, I've been Fauna Blakewell, and you've been changed forever.